Welcome to another DAP, Driver Assistance Program. For this time we're going to be at Summit Point Raceway. This is typically for our XMS TCC series. There'll be links down in the description if you feel like joining a league. But this is just to get a nice, safe, competitive lap around Summit Point. I'm going to go ahead and this might not be the quote-unquote winning setup, but if you're struggling to get around here, this is going to simplify this track. Some people have a really hard time with this track, and it's fairly simple to get around. It's hard to get those extra tenths out of it, but it's really easy to make a lot of mistakes, especially in the S's, and we'll go over that in a little bit. But this is the GR86 is the car that I'm using. And of course, like I said, it's Summit Point Raceway. The weather here is 66 degrees. See the rest of it here, it's partly cloudy. No moisture. The wind, I've got it at 1 right now. Our league has it set to like 13 or maybe or actually 3 or 4, but it doesn't have which direction right now, so I'm just using 1. Humidity is 100%, which is going to make it a little foggy out here. The date is actually set for 4/1/24. At 2:30 p.m., which is between our two races. Static weather, I don't want it to change, so I can run consistent laps in between. I think anything else. So the static weather, you can see this is how I have it set up here. I don't know if I can change it over to metric for you, but it's the way I've got it set up anyway. You can see April 1st, 2:30, and the track conditions. I have taken the marbles off just because I want it to be the same every time, but I do want it to be at 40% because that's what we usually start around. Get this going. All right, like I said, it's a little bit foggy here. The setup that I'm going to use, I'm literally just going to start with the fixed setup. I'm going to leave everything here the same. I am going to change my fuel to 8.2 gallons, which should get you home. Please test that, make sure that it actually gets you. We're doing a 30-minute race here. So I'm going to do 8.2 gallons. I'm not even changing ride heights, nothing like that. I'm not going to change the ABS settings. Just to let you guys know, I typically like to run this at 1, and I like to run traction control off, but for this, I'm literally going to just change the fuel and run it that way. We're going to go ahead and run a hot lap. Actually, I'm going to run 15, just so you guys can see the consistency. Alright, so did okay there. I had a little oopsie on lap 10, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Fast lap here was a 120.7. Not a too shabby lap there. If you can run in the 121s like this, the low 121s, you'll be fairly competitive. Again, this is about a safe lap, and I just want you to see the consistency there. I mean, the out lap, of course, is slower, but especially with the cold tires and everything like that. But after that, I mean, 21.5, 1 flat, 1 2, 1 2, 1 flat, 1 flat, 1 1. The quote-unquote miracle lap at a 20.7. oopsie at a 1.5 and then right back into a 1.1. So this is the kind of consistency that I always talk about trying to get before you start messing with setups. If you can't do this, don't bother with setups. I mean, unless it's something like you just can't get around for some reason, but on the fixed setup with 8.2 gallons, it's not a bad setup. I mean, really, it's still fairly competitive. I mean, I could probably run this and you know, I mean, do fairly well. So practice getting your consistency down before you start messing with anything else. Let's just go ahead and pick a lap here. I'm not even going to pick the fast one. We'll talk about my oopsie later. So I'm just going to pick one kind of right in the middle, where the lap time or minimum my laps, so lap 6. So out of 11, I'm just going to pick one right in the middle. Nothing special about this lap because this should all be fairly consistent. So heading into turn 1 here. All right, so for turn 1, I'm going to be braking at these 3 cones here. You can brake a lot later than that. Don't worry about it. Again, if you're watching this video, you're here for a consistent lap and a safe lap. Brake on the 3s. Keep it easy. All right, so now that we're here at the 3s, if I'm braking on the 3s here like this, then I like to downshift pretty much as soon as I can, which is about the 2.5. And then I brake again probably about the 1.5. And then there's like a little dirt patch here. I'm going to brake, or sorry, I'm going to downshift again. So this is going to be going into 4th. This is going to be going into 3rd, and this one is a 2, which my writing is really horrible, but that's the way you should be doing that. So we'll see when it blips here. So you can see my brakes are coming on at the 3. Rolling through a little bit. When we see it blip, we know there's a downshift right there, so the 2.5. And you notice my brakes, I'm not 100%. Just trying to keep it nice and smooth here. I should downshift right about the 1.5. There's the blip. A little bit before the 1 cone. And then this is that dirt patch that I was talking about right here in the middle that I like trying to get down into 2nd. You want to make sure you're into 2nd before. I'll show you the patch up here. So I kept calling this a patch. Actually, the exit road. So where the asphalt kind of veers off to the left, that's where I want to be in 2nd. Let's see if I can actually get into 2nd about that point. Where does it blip? Oh, okay. A little bit later, that's fine. But there's this patch here. You can see this whole thing right here, which is really good for a couple reasons. One, I want to make sure that I've got, I want to be in 2nd before this. Second thing is, it's really nice about this is put your rights on this seam. You'll notice I'm going to pretty much, this is my driving line for this. I haven't looked at the iRacing driving line yet, but I like to really just keep my right sides on that seam. Just makes a nice consistent little lap there. I'm going to run this in slow motion. See, I'm kind of running that there. A little bouncy. And I want to stay off these curbs, but I want to get as close as I can to them. Let me see if I touch that curb. Ooh, I did. This was a mistake, so don't do that. Maybe I'll show you another one. Or you can go watch the hot laps, and you can see all my laps, all my mistakes, and all that kind of stuff. Don't do that. I want the right sides on that seam. So that one I cut a little bit too much. The other thing is, let me back this up. Start getting back on the throttle. Oh, I should talk about that too, getting back on the throttle. It's about where the apex is. I think I'm pretty consistent in that, where let it just kind of roll in and hit that apex. So I'm going to hit this in slow motion again. And don't be afraid to run wide here. You know, if you have to let off. But a lot of times, as long as you brake at the 3 cones, get it down into 2nd before that turn in, pretty much no matter what line you run, you shouldn't really have to let off. I mean, you can run it wide all the way in the whites out, like a white curbing out here. Don't be afraid to kind of open up this wheel a little bit so the fronts aren't dragging so much, and let it just kind of open up and ease out going wide. Of course, if there's nobody out here, I should say this. Practice this corner being on the inside and practice being on the outside of somebody. Or if you're not doing a solo, just, you know, just pretend there's someone on the inside and then pretend there's someone on the outside on this. And then we're just going to kind of let it roll through. In fact, I'm going to show you guys just real quick another lap. I'm going to show you the next lap. So we're here on the the seam. Let's see what I do on the seam. Much better. Okay, that was much better. And you can see that I rolled that seam all the way out. I want my right side just kind of shooting off the end of this. That's exactly what I want. I just want to run it, boom, out there. And I'm probably, at least it feels like it's, that's where I'm at. Pretty close. You can see my right side's right on that seam. That's what I want. Shoot right off of there. After that, I want to just let it erase this. Go. Just kind of hold whatever you're doing. Just kind of hold the steering wheel that way, as long as it's going to come around. If you start running the white these white dots, that's fine. If it comes over towards the grass, that's fine. You just want to be consistent because you're full throttle, and you can start opening it up in a second. But I'm going to go back to that other lap because that's what we said we were going to look at. That's the other thing. I probably won't mention it on every turn, but I really want you to notice I kind of get my wheel set and then I open it up. The last thing I want to do ever is either let off the throttle or start turning more into the turn. Unless it's, of course, a decreasing radius. But if it's either a consistent radius or it's opening, I want my hands to be consistent or opening. I do not want my hands to have to start turning in more. So just, and then watch also how much I'm turning. I probably had a lot of knuckle on that one. And what I mean by a lot of knuckle is, if you watch back your replays, I typically don't go more than about 12 o'clock is probably the most I ever go on anything. But this one here, I'm probably got too much. If you watch my other laps, I can almost guarantee my knuckles are only coming up about the 11 o'clock here, not getting all the way up to close to 12 o'clock here. But then you'll notice they're there for just a split second. But after that, I just want to ease them back out. Now this turn seems to give people fits. It's actually pretty easy the way that I can show you. It's pretty much the way I do it. I've tested braking in here and just letting off, and for me, if I need the speed, maybe I'll do a brush of the brake and do it much later. But I'm going to show you guys, and I did all my laps this way, so you're not going to see any of my, if you watch the hot laps at the end, I've never hit the brake here on any of those. What I've been doing is where this access road ends, I'm just going to let off the gas there. Then I'm going to turn in a little bit before the next road. I mean, I like to kind of visualize as if I'm turning in here, but it's probably a little too late. I'm just going to start turning in a little bit there. Let's see how good I was at that. So coming in here. Let off at the end, which I did. Then just start turning in right before this guy here. When I'm looking here, is what I want to do is I want to start picking the throttle up a little bit before this curb, but I do not want to stomp on it. I want to roll back on. I don't know how good I was on every lap, but I should roll back on in the beginning. You can see I'm not full throttle, not full throttle. It's okay to hit curb or not take curb. It doesn't really matter on this one. So if you run a little bit wide and you don't hit the curb, that's fine. Just wait a tad longer to get back to full throttle. But what I do is, at the beginning of this curve that I'm sitting on right now, ease onto it, just roll into it. And then you should be full throttle by the end of the curb, roughly. And I am. So it's quite bouncy. If you're going out towards here, because this is where everybody has the problem. They always end up in this gravel. You shouldn't. If you just let off where I told you, turn in and ease back onto the throttle, you shouldn't really have that problem. If you do, you should be noticing that you're going to do that about here. Just wait. Just keep the throttle at 75% or wherever you're at. Just leave it there until you're confident you're not going to go out in that gravel. Then punch it. All right, so we'll watch that at full speed here. All right, coming into this one, this is another one that seems to give everybody fits. Make this one really simple on you. You'll see, there's like a paint, I don't know, there's the end of the road here, then there's like The way the iRacing has it, there's almost like a joint there, and then like a joint there, like a little bit of an angle. This one out here is the one I want to start turning in a little bit before that. And then I'm just going to ease the throttle off. You can do a couple things. You can let it breathe entirely, take it 100% off. You can take it like 50% off. Whatever you do, play with it and get used to it. Because what you want to do is you want to be your full throttle. I mean, you can go full throttle here, but there's really not much of a need. You're not really going to gain much time, if any, because you're scrubbing your tires so much. So take it easy on those fronts. Just be like half throttle or no throttle for just a quick second. I come in here, I start turning in, and then you watch the throttle, quarter, and then back onto it. You can see how tight I kept that. And then once you pass the wall here, that's when I like to start hitting my brakes. So I should be hitting the brakes really soon. In fact, there we are, right there. Right as I was saying it. So I'm hitting the brakes here. This is that the tire barrier, the beginning of the tire wall. So just a little bit past that is where I like to do it. Pretty hard on the brakes here. And then there's this patch out here. I want to make sure that I'm turning in. I'm probably a little shallow here. I like to be a little bit wider. Just make sure you don't catch the grass. But I want to be turning in about there. You'll see now I'm turning in. And then here's another one of those turns that's really nice because it's got a built-in driving line for you. Again, it's got this seam. Run your left sides on that seam. But you're going to be off throttle until right about here. Right at the apex. And then roll back on. This is another one of those turns where you need to kind of feel like if the car just sticks, you can get on it easy. If you feel like you're starting to go towards the grass, you can stay on the throttle, but just stay on very lightly. I do make a mistake later on, and I will show you. This is the turn that I messed up a little bit. I was thinking about the recording and other stuff going on, which I can't like think about other stuff or talk when I'm driving. My teammates all know that. But anyway, I'm gonna come in here and I want those lefts on that seam. And you'll notice no throttle, no throttle. Halfway through, I start to pick it up and I roll back on. It's probably on pretty quick there because I probably knew it was going to happen. You can see I run that seam, for the most part, all the way until just towards the end. And then I start bringing it back. And I'll play this in full speed, but I'll walk you through what's happening here. You don't need to get it fully to the left, but I do like to get pretty much just right in the middle. Maybe a little bit further left than this. I don't want to be any further right than this because, again, I'm setting up. I want to go to the seam. You're going to see this seam right here. See this patch? I want my right sides on that seam. And it's going to carry me all the way around. Let me go back and I'll show you up to this point in full speed. Alright, so I just backed it up. We're going to, like I said, somewhere in here. Actually, sorry, it's right at this point. I'm a little bit further ahead right now. So right about in here, I'm going to start turning in, ease in, hit the brakes, and then follow that seam all the way on the left. All right, so like I said, right sides on this seam here. We'll just walk this in slow motion a little bit. You're going to see I want to stay off this curb. Maybe touch it, just a touch, but not really. Right sides on the seam. Keep your hands once you've got it in that motion, once you're kind of set. Watch the hands. I should keep my hands pretty much the same all the way around, and then I'm gonna pick up this next seam. I want my rights on this seam here. So not exactly following the line here, but definitely this spot here. I want my right sides in there. That's what I'm looking for. I want the right sides to catch right there. So I'm going to do this in slow motion again, and you can see the right sides are on that seam. I want to stay off that curb, but then once I open it up a little bit, because you're going to see I open it up just a little bit, and watch, they'll just stay like that. In fact, I'll just sit here like this. Those hands, I want them pretty much just like that until the rights are about to hit the curb. I like to stay off the curbs. This car does not like curbs, for the most part. You'll notice, now I start coming back. Could open this up a little bit more, because this is a big rhythm section where you can lose a lot of time. So really work on getting that rhythm down. And it all starts in the turn before. When I come in here, what I want to do is I want to get the lefts almost on the grass. This is one of those ones, it's really easy to get an off track here. But I like to just kind of run those lefts, not quite on the curb, but I want to kind of hit that little section here. I do not want to be at all in this grass. Normally, I tell you guys all the time, use the curb like a barrel and have your tires kind of shooting out of the middle of it. It doesn't work in this one because you'll get an off track every time. So just make sure those lefts kind of just stay on the asphalt there. You can touch the grass a little bit, but hardly any at all. The next thing I want to do is I want to get in this little pocket right here. On my left's inside there, watch out that you don't touch the grass. And this is really tricky here. If you went wide here, if you're too wide, let off. You have to get into this pocket. If you don't, you're going to be way, way, way shallow in this little section over here. So even if you know, if I was further out this way right now, I am going to do everything I can to get back into that little pocket. I want to be left sides in there. And this is all full throttle through here. You should be able to just keep this on. If you have to let it breathe, but not much. Then here, this is the one curb you can hit. In fact, I'd suggest probably hitting it a lot. I hit it there. The other thing about this is very deceptive. You're going to want to unwind the hands early because you feel like, oh, I just got through that apex, it's going to open up. It doesn't. Just kind of keep your hands however you were, however it's feeling good. Keep your hands that way until you're absolutely 100% sure you're not going to run off into the grass here. A little trick here, there's a bump in this turn. I'm going to play this in slow motion and see if you can, actually I'll put it in this frame by frame. There's a bump. As soon as you're past that bump, then you can open your hands up. You open your hands up a little early, what happens is you'll be turning slightly, you'll hit that bump, and because the tires lose contact just a little bit, you're going to slide more, and now you're fighting that you're going to be off in that grass. So wait until this bump, and you're going to see how violent it is right here. And there it is. Look at that bump. That's huge. So after that, then you can open up. All right. Coming to the last turn, there's all this dirt in the grass, and that's a really nice mark because where that dirt kind of starts right here, I like to just start brushing the brakes. And then a little bit before the end, I want to be turning in. So I'm going to be turning in here. But this is just a brush of the brakes. And this is, for me, a feel turn. I know where I want to start braking, but I can't ever tell exactly how much or for how long. So every lap, it's slightly different. So I can't tell you exactly what I'm going to do here, but I know I should be starting the brakes here, just brushing them. And as soon as I'm confident that the rights are going to be able to hit that curb on the right side, because I want to run that curb on the right side, and you're going to ease back on the throttle as well. I promised to go full speed back here. Let me back it up and I'll show you full speed through the S's. So go in the middle, run that seam, get back on it. Oh, one thing I want you to notice, it's rolling back on the throttle. It's pretty much everywhere at this track. Roll back, or pretty much with this car at every track. Roll onto the throttle, don't stab it. So you roll until you feel you're confident and keep going, and then you go to 100%, and then leave it there. So you watch the throttle on here, and I'm going from seam to seam on this one. Alright, so back to our last turn here. So if I walk this slowly again, I'm going to be braking in a little bit at the patch, and we're just going to kind of drag it. So I'm going to go very slow through here. Where did I actually touch the brakes? And there. Maybe a little early. And then I'll start turning in. Like I said, I do it before the end of this. So probably about halfway, I'm starting to turn in. You can do it a couple different ways. I've gone and done a little bit later, and I've also kind of started early. This one doesn't seem to hurt you as bad by going a little bit early, but if you go too early, you're gonna kill your exit speed. But this one, as long as you're smooth on it, it's not the end of the world if you go a little early. I'd probably stay a little bit later than this. You can probably watch my other laps. I probably do. But it looks like I was starting to creep down, getting a little lazy on this one. But see, I'm just brushing the brakes. I'm just making sure that I want to get into that curb over there on the right. Then as soon as I know I'm good, in fact, I'd say most of the time, I'm coming back on the throttle at the beginning of this curb. It's kind of that's my get back on the throttle mark, if you will. I'm probably just riding it, and then right when I hit the curb, there it is. You'll notice again, ease back on the throttle. I'm not going to stomp on it here. Easing, 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 and full throttle by the end of the curb. Then you can just run it wide. You can run all the way out here, no off tracks. I don't even know where the off track is out here. I think if you start touching the gravel out here or touch this grass, I think you start getting off tracks. But you can run this. I mean, you can see from, you know, we are way off. This would be a normal off track pretty much everywhere else. So another one of those iRacing inconsistencies. But as long as you don't hit that gravel, you're not getting it off track. That is the end of the track walk. We're not doing pit entrance for this race, so I'm not going to go over pit entrance, and it's a fairly basic one, but I'm not going to go over it because I wasn't practicing it, and I don't have much to show you guys. Alright, so we'll go ahead and do the analysis of the driving line. I typically don't use the driving line to learn, like learning a new track. I like to kind of learn it on my own. And then I like to compare it and kind of see what I'm doing that's different. Maybe there's some tips and tricks, but so we'll go ahead and take a look at the driving line, see how it compares to what I'm doing. I'd imagine, just based on how iRacing typically is, they usually like to brake a little later than I do. And since this is more of a safer lap, they're probably going to be braking a lot later than I am. But again, for people that are having problems getting around the track, I wouldn't necessarily use their brake points. But we'll see how the driving line looks. And I'll tell you guys what I think of it. Alright, coming into turn one, it's actually kind of interesting because they're braking on the 3. So you can brake later here when you get used to it, but I don't think you're really getting a ton of time. I'd probably say learn how to brake about the 2.5, just if you're in a battle. But for the most part, I think 3 is a good place to be braking. So yep, I brake basically the same spot. Let's see how this goes around the outside. Coming off the brake, rail braking, all that looks about the same. Oh, that's the lap that I hit that corner. Okay, but you'll see there, on all the other ones, you can pretty much see they're probably a little bit more right than I would normally be. You can see, okay, so from this angle you can see, I like to have my right sides on that seam, and they want you, if that's dead center, then a little bit more, but it's pretty close. You can see that the driving line for them is on the seam, but I like my right sides on the seam. All right, so this is interesting. So where I let off, they're also letting off, it looks like. Pretty close, you can see it's going from the green to the white, but they're actually using their brakes. If you're letting off back here, you don't need to use your brakes at all. So if you're going to use your brakes, stay on the gas harder, a little bit longer, and then start brushing them where they're telling you to. But I wouldn't do both. Don't let off and then also use your brakes. It's just going to slow you down too much. Okay, so looks like they're also just letting off about the same spot. They are going to almost a full white, which means letting off completely. It almost looks like there might be a touch of red in there too, but don't be hitting your brakes here at all, and either let off for a very short period, probably less than this completely, or for this whole distance for about 50%, what I would do. See what I did here. It looks like I was still on, and you can see I never quite let off, and then I'm just back onto it. Brake point, about the same. So a little bit after that wall, go ahead and hit him hard. Trailing off, probably the same as me. Take it, getting back on, pretty much same thing. I do like to take a little wider in here, but I do like coming back left like they are. Let's see where they're hitting the brakes compared to me. Yeah, about the same. And I agree. You want to be off the brakes, getting in to before you hit this seam. You want to be rolling it here. So like they're rolling it, I think that's a good spot. So far, I'm agreeing with most of the driving line, except for that hitting the brakes on that left uphill back there. Yeah, I'd probably go a little bit left of where they are. I like running that seam, and then this is good, tucking it back in. I want to see how they do the S's. Yeah, see, I would definitely. I think. See, they're actually letting off in here, whereas if you're off in this pocket like I was showing, then you don't need to let off at all. You can keep it floored all the way through here. So they're staying right, entering this more shallow. I don't understand why they would do that, unless they're carrying more speed into this. But that's kind of interesting because it's not really a passing zone. Like you're setting up for the passing zone. Um, so you're really not in too much danger here. You know, if you're full throttle and just going from one side to the other, no one's really going to pass you here. So I think this is kind of a bad move. This is one I definitely disagree with. All right, they're braking way late. If I'm not sure how fast this is compared to what I'm doing, I might experiment with this, but I think what I'm doing is pretty quick because what they're doing is they're letting off then braking, whereas I'm braking early and then rolling into it. So I don't know. There might be something here for this, but I think mine's a lot easier to do. And then they're rolling back into it. Looks like they're probably full throttle, about the same place that I was. Yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts on the driving line. We'll talk a little bit about setup. First thing, tires, I wouldn't change them at all. Most of the setup, I mean, I haven't played with the setup too much at this track, but I'll just say in my normal setup, a lot of times I'm running stiffer springs all the way around, like 400 all the way around. Maybe a little bit less on the ride height, just because by putting the springs up in the rear, it makes it a little looser. But the biggest thing is probably changing this wing. I was kind of playing around. A lot of my sets I like to run a 10. It lets the back kind of float a little more, and it's not quite as draggy on the straights. And it's not a huge difference between a 10 and a 5, but there seems to be a little bit bigger difference between a 15 and a 10. But I haven't tested it a lot, but if you get the back end, it'll rotate better, which is when it hooks up, it's nice. But it's one of those things where it's like, 7 out of 10 times it's worse, but one of the 3 times that it's nice, it's like really nice. And what I mean by it's worse is the back will start to slide a little bit. It won't be completely out of control, but it'll just slow you down. And then you've got a bad corner, and anytime you think you would have made up on the straight, which is not that much usually, I mean, it's like 500ths, something like that. And if you lose 1500ths in the turn or more, then it's not really worth it. Anyway, I get used to that set, the fixed setup. But the other thing I might change is just for my style. I like to have the traction control off and the ARB settings at 1. Brakes here, I like to change brakes pretty much. I'll do it track by track, but if there's a lot of like hairpin type stuff, then I'll put the heavier brakes on. Or if there's something like I think it's Mid Ohio where the turn 1 you got kind of brush where every time I'm brushing the brakes, I like to have a light brake on it just to have a little more control over it. The toe in, I like to run about 2, so 2.2 is probably not a big deal. Front slammed, I like that. Spring rates, These aren't bad spring rates. I mean, they're still pretty heavy. They got a little bit lighter in the rear. They're running real stiff up front. I usually like to run pretty stiff up front as well. Same thing with the back. I mean, that's as high as it'll go. Nope, the one. I don't know. You can play with this. If this track I think I like it with the one right now, but I'll probably be playing with that a little bit to see if I can get the back to rotate a little more with that. When the wing's up at 15, you're going to need to loosen the car up maybe a little bit. But again, if you're not, we're talking about after you're getting, within a tenth or two of your, kind of your average time, one way or the other. You shouldn't be having these wild swings in your lap times. The shocks are actually pretty close. I've changed them depending on some tracks, but for the most part, shocks really aren't that bad. The only other thing I like to do is they run a lot more toe in, which is nice because when it starts to slide, you can catch it a lot easier with this at a 0.4, 0.5 that they normally run. I usually run this at the smallest minimum. I've seen some people run toe out, and that's nice. Once the back end kind of gets set, it'll kind of rotate you more. But it can also get a little bit, it'll kind of hook you a little bit. Camber I wouldn't touch, especially on a short race. We're only doing 30 minutes. We're doing two 30-minute races. So I would definitely keep these at 4. So I'd say, the setup, the fixed setup really isn't that bad. And it feels pretty good. It's still pretty fast. But a note about the 10 wing, the place that I will lose it, I don't lose it here, but I'll walk you through what, oh, it looks like I accidentally clicked the shut up crazy fool button. I don't even know where that is. I don't have that mapped. But anyway, I'll show you where I usually would lose it. So everything will be good into here. And the back might just step out a little bit here. But what happens is, once you go back to full throttle, this will hook up. And it feels really, really, really good. And then all of a sudden, it just keeps rotating and keeps rotating. And then right about here, it will start to get loose on me. I don't know if it starts like there's a hill. I probably have to look at the elevation change if there's anything here. And maybe it's up by this apex a little more. But right in this area, I was running my Sebring set, which had a 10 wing on it. And right in this area, it would just, the back end would just keep going and keep going. And then all of a sudden, it comes around. I think the rest of the track is pretty good. But it will get a little tail happy where it's not out of, like, this is the only place I would actually spin. But the rest of the track was, it would just start to break loose and just lose time. About all I have to say about the setup. Other than that, I hope this helps you guys. And I know it's been a long time. I don't do these very often anymore. So these do help you. Please leave a comment. Just let me know what you like, don't like, as I always say. So the production value isn't up on these because it just takes me so much time, but I figure it's better get the content out for you guys. And if it helps, let me know. Thank you.
75, flat position. Flat position. Championship box